If there is one series of games that has risen in popularity over the last few years, it's the Souls series. With its tight controls and tough but fair difficulty, the Souls games have become pinnacles of game design. But with success comes imitation. We already saw this with Lords of the Fallen with meh results. But does imitation mean a game can't be good? What about the new Salt and Sanctuary game? Salt and Sanctuary is developed by Ska Studios, who are most well known for their games on Xbox Live Arcade. The game is designed to play like a 2D Dark Souls, and it sells on that. It starts on this with a character customization screen that is so close to Dark Souls and Bloodborne's character builder that Ska Studios might want to be on the lookout for legal paperwork from Software. Now the first sticking point for me is the character art, especially for humans because it doesn't blend well with the rest of the game, and it looks like it's out of an early 2000 Flash game. This is fortunately made up for with the many enemy and boss designs. The story of Salt and Sanctuary begins with you on a ship that is being boarded by a group led by, well, Cthulhu. After you inevitably get your shit wrecked, you awaken on the shores of a mysterious island and are left to piece things together. You can find bits of info from item descriptions and talking to the few NPCs you find in the world, much like a certain From Software game. The first thing you will do on this island is choose your covenant. Creed. These creeds affect the types of items that can be purchased at bonfires. Sanctuaries, which might incentivize you to play around with different creeds. If a sanctuary is under your creeds, you can also add different merchants and services if you offer certain idols, like a blacksmith for upgrading your weapons, or a guide to teleport between sanctuaries. The combat is the most Dark Souls-esque it could be while still being in 2 dimensions. You have a variety of swords, maces, spears, hammers, etc., with varying levels of scaling for strength and dexterity stats that determine how well you can use them. There's also magic, prayers, and bows for long-range offense and general spell usage. All of these can be used in a variety of combinations that make different character builds that make each playthrough unique, similar to the Souls games and their almost infinite replayability. I personally spent the most time as a mage skilled with scythes and spears. Much like the Souls series, every attack or spell uses stamina, which replenishes after a second, but if you do too many consecutive attacks or combos, you will be left open for a counterattack. Spells additionally lower your stamina pool with each use until you go back to a sanctuary, so you will have to keep an eye on your stamina when using a mage or cleric build, or you will have a bad time. Defensively, you have a block, which I found really ineffective, and a dodge roll. The dodge roll takes a lot of getting used to, both knowing the timing of it and when to use it on each enemy, but you will need this skill by the mid-game. So, get good? Though there are times when, due to small enemies and the level obscuring them, you won't be quick enough to defend yourself, which can be a bit infuriating. Now, if there's another game that Salt and Sanctuary takes inspiration from, it's Castlevania, specifically Symphony of the Night. Much like any good Metroidvania-style game, the level design intricately weaves and overlaps almost endlessly. You will open a shortcut hours in and find yourself near the start of the game. I was always amazed any time I opened a gate and found myself in an area I went through days ago. The Symphony of the Night parallels don't end there. There's also abilities that you will unlock that will open up hidden areas, so you'll have to do a bit of backtracking to find things you might have missed, and you will need all of these abilities to get to the end of the game. Probably one of the most standout elements of Salt and Sanctuary is the boss fights. While some are a bit too easy, requiring almost no thought and you can just slash away, most of the bosses are amazing. You really have to understand the attacks, learn the patterns, and at times even use the level itself. This makes defeating the toughest bosses so rewarding. It makes me really wish that there was a boss rush mode in this game just so I could face all the bosses in a row. If you aren't careful though, or make a stupid move, you could lose all your salt in these fights. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, salt is the currency for this game, because Souls would be a bit too on the nose. On top of adding flavor to your fries, salt is used for leveling up your stats and your weapons at your sanctuaries, hence the name Salt and Sanctuary. Much like certain games, you lose all the salt you have when you die, and you must go back and defeat the enemy who killed you to get it back. If you fail and die before doing this, you will lose that salt for good. Now while this might make some gamers a bit salty, this does mean that you have to be careful when approaching new enemies, or when exploring new areas, especially when you have a high sodium count. One interesting aspect this game has is the leveling system. Instead of leveling up your stats directly, you use salt to purchase the leveling item, which is used in a skill tree to level up your stats and weapon mastery. And I gotta say, it's bullshit that consuming salt doesn't give me mastery over weapons, all it does is make me feel bloated. Purchasing the leveling item also means you can bank them until you know exactly what stats you want to focus on, without being in danger of losing all your salt from a death. But while it's an interesting system and complementary skills and stats are put near each other, it can be difficult to find stats you're looking for since the points are so small and the tree has so many branches. Honestly, I would have preferred the creators just copy and paste the Dark Souls or Bloodborne leveling systems like they did pretty much everything else. And therein lies one of the biggest problems with this game, and that's that it relies too much on the Dark Souls design. Salt and Sanctuary at times crosses the line from loving homage to almost blatant ripoff. Now I love the Souls series, and I'm glad to see game companies are experimenting with its gameplay design, but Salt and Sanctuary doesn't really try to bring anything new or exciting to the table, and any changes are minimal or unnoticeable. The only real exception to this is the movement abilities that I mentioned earlier, and those are gameplay elements lifted out of 2D Metroidvania games. They could have gone with a different art style or setting, or even had unique character skills for each class, but instead Ska Studios relied heavily on the template that From Software made for them. That being said, I really enjoyed this game, putting in a lot of hours, and would still highly recommend it, especially for those looking for a challenge. Or those just waiting for Dark Souls 3 to release. Now if you'll excuse me, I suddenly have a craving for some salty fries.